AI, hot topic, controversy, positive, negative, everyone has their opinion.
There's a lot of misinterpretation. There's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of skepticism.
Sure.
We're able to report to our clients a lot faster because we're leveraging AI.
Where does somebody start in terms of navigating all the options for AI and what's available?
A big part of it, I think, is
Everything except the law will begin after a brief word from Answering Legal. Visit answeringlegal.com to learn more about our virtual receptionist team.
Answering Legal helps my practice by allowing me to never miss a call, and all of my clients and potential clients, when they call, they always reach a live person. The office doesn't miss any calls anymore. We get text messages. Somebody is available 24/7. Clients can call and reach a live person at any time. I absolutely would recommend Answering Legal to other attorneys in our area. It allows attorneys to have a little more freedom. Answering Legal allows me to get more work done.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Answering Legal's Everything Except the Law podcast. I'm Taryn Winter Brill. Just call me TWB. Now, if this is your first time tuning in, welcome. This is the podcast where we share expert advice on all of the parts of running a law firm that attorneys weren't exactly trained for back in law school. Now, in recent years, AI technology has made so much more possible for the legal community. And the company created by today's guest is proof of just that. He's the founder of Skribe, an AI-powered solution that helps litigators capture their own legal testimony without the hassle, the delays, and the high costs of the court reporting agencies. In our conversation today, we'll be learning more about Skribe and diving into AI's impact on the world of law. Karl Seelbach joins me now. Karl, it's great to see you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Likewise, excited to dive into, obviously, AI, very hot topic. But before we do so, can you catch our audience up on your experience in the world of law? Tell us a little bit about your background.
So this is the part where you make me feel like an older lawyer than I think I am. So
Sorry.
I've been, yeah. So it's okay. I'm starting to come to grips with it. So I have been practicing law since 2006, and so my exposure to law started at a big law firm, Winstead, a large firm based in Dallas, but I was in their Houston office. And back then we did still did paper filing. You would still send a runner to the courthouse to file things with the courts. A lot of attorneys would still go to the library to pick up physical books to do their legal research. And I remember in particular that my legal secretary, who was probably in her mid 60s at the time, looked at me like I was a bit of an alien when I asked her if she could digitize one of my case files so that we could pull everything up electronically. So I guess I did just date myself a little bit, but yeah, I started practicing in 2006 and then been involved in the practice of law ever since.
Terrific. Yeah, I do have to say, we'll encourage everyone at the end to go to your website. Super impressive. You're being a little humble on your background, I feel. But I'm sure it'll come up as we get into the conversation on AI. So let's dive into it, Karl. AI, hot topic, right? Like any topic, controversy, positive, negative, everyone has their opinion. But there's no denying that AI technology is creating a lot of new opportunities in the attorney community. So I'm curious your thoughts on AI. How do you believe those in the world of law should be viewing recent AI advancements?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of misinterpretation. There's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of skepticism
Sure.
as well. I mean, I think sometimes attorneys, like by their nature, maybe it's the way that we're trained in law school. It's very like, surely you can't do that with software, or there's no way software will ever replace this role or that role. So I see a lot of doubt sometimes until attorneys get to really roll up their sleeves and test things.
Yeah.
There's also a bit of fear because they've heard stories of attorneys who used ChatGPT or something like that for legal research or to help in brief writing, and then ended up getting sanctioned because the case didn't actually exist. So, a big part of it, I think, is education.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where I see probably one of the biggest things that the entire legal community needs, especially software vendors that are trying to sell to attorneys and law firms and even in-house counsel. Education is just such a major part of it.
And Karl, just to follow up again, where does somebody start in terms of navigating all the options for AI and what's available?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the best places to start is probably your local bar association or your state bar association, because there's so many speakers that are giving presentations on these topics. The one that I give, for example, if anyone's interested, I'm happy to share my presentation, goes over actual use cases and apps that you can deploy in your law practice today. and it starts as simple as Chat GPT, but it's the enterprise version. So one piece of advice to your audience: if you're dipping your toe into AI, make sure you're paying for the product. Otherwise, you are the product.
Yeah.
And so with Chat GPT, for example, if you get an enterprise license, that's a different privacy policy, and they're not training on your data that you submit. But I think really signing up for one of those type of 101s, those webinars, learning and seeing some of the tools and the things that you can do with those tools. I even created one internally. I'll give one example to your audience. One of the things that I do at my firm, we have about 15 attorneys and about 13 paralegals. Our bills get reviewed all the time, and sometimes they get cut by these vendors whose sole purpose in life is to cut bills, which is just insane, but it's so frustrating. So I actually no code was written by me, but I used a Chat GPT agent to go in and analyze these invoices and recommend appeal language so that we could speed up the process of appealing write-downs of our invoices. Then it gets proofed by the partner who's responsible for that particular case, and then it gets submitted. So it took what used to be a very manual process and sped it up tremendously.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like you're really honed in. You have so much to offer our audience. And you mentioned a little bit about what your firm is doing, especially that's a great nugget with the Chat GPT enterprise versus traditional. So tell us more about how your practice, Doyle and Seelbach, is starting to use AI technology. Just give us a little bit more detail.
Yeah, I'll give another
Yeah.
example. So I'm still piloting some of these tools.
Mhm.
So I've worked with Case Texas Co-Counsel, which has been acquired, I think, by Thomson Reuters last year for the small price of $500 million. But I've piloted that. I piloted Lexis AI for legal research. I do think if you're going to use AI for legal research, you should go to a Lexis, to a Thomson Reuters, and use a program that's very well established and vetted, so you reduce, if not eliminate, the risk of hallucinations in case law.
Yeah.
Another place where we use it is actually with Skribe, which is one of the companies that I co-founded, and we use it to not only decrease the cost of taking depositions, but the generative AI piece comes in on the back end. So we're actually able to, like, if this was a deposition, for example, as soon as it's over, we're able to go into the Skribe web application, summarize the entire deposition using AI,
Yeah.
and actually get video clips created for us of all of the key moments from the deposition. So for us as a defense firm, we primarily do personal injury defense for large Fortune 500 companies across the state of Texas. It helps speed up the entire reporting process. We're able to report to our clients a lot faster because we're leveraging AI.
Yeah. I mean, I've looked, reading about it obviously before our chat today, and it's just incredible what you've created. How did it come about? I assume it was just from a need, right? It was just taking weeks having to wait on testimony, right? And you're like, there's got to be a better way.
Yeah, I mean, it was a few different things. So I had the good fortune of, when I started my practice at Winstead in 2006, I had a couple of partners who gave me the chance to start taking depositions right out of the gate. And that's not always true at a big
Mhm.
firm. I was just very fortunate that they let me start. I flew to New Jersey for my first deposition and crisscrossed the state of Texas ever since taking these depositions. And I would always think, as I was taking them, gosh, this is so expensive for our clients that we're driving or flying all over the place. And I also, as we would sit in the conference room and we would take the deposition, I would think, this is so archaic, the process that we're using to take this testimony. We've got a funny looking typewriter, a stenograph machine that was invented in 1877.
Yeah. Literally.
And then it
Yeah.
literally, and then if we want a video record, we have to pay a videographer to set up equipment that looks like it was used to film the movie Jaws.
Right.
And then at the end of this deposition, if I want to be able to report back to my client, I hope I have a good memory or I took some notes, because the chances are, unless I want to pay double or triple, I'm not going to get a copy of the video or the transcript for weeks, sometimes more than a month.
Wild.
And so I always I took, hundreds of depositions pre-COVID, and I always would think to myself, there's got to be a better way to do this. And when COVID hit, that was really the entry point for an idea like Skribe.
I was going to say, what year was it created? It was right around when COVID hit.
Yeah, it was about a year after I reconnected with a good friend of mine, Tom Irby, who used to own a court reporting agency before he sold it to Veritex. And Tom and we'd kicked around an idea for many years of how could we modernize the deposition process. And we even thought about kind of an Uber for depositions model where you have court reporters, but it's all software driven.
Right.
And we decided not to pursue that. And then after COVID hit, what happened with depositions is the vast majority, during COVID, almost 100%, but even now about 70 to 80% of depositions now take place in Zoom or something like Zoom. And so that we saw that entry point and we saw it beginning to kind of have staying power. Like is one thing for attorneys to do it during Zoom.
Right.
The big question was, what about when everybody returns to the office?
Right.
Is it going to go back to all in person? And we made a bet that it would not go back to all in person and that people were beginning to appreciate the convenience and the cost savings of doing things online. And it turned out that bet was right.
Yeah.
So we started the company in 2022. Towards the end of 2021, very beginning of 2022, we did a lot of due diligence and discovery, and then we launched the product in May of 2023.
I was just going to say, how long does it take to develop something like that?
Too long, too long. It always takes longer than you think it's going to take and costs more than you think it's going to cost.
Like anything, right? So is what you have today the vision for it? I mean, or are there still going to be versions of it?
Yeah, it's the first step of the vision. So the first step in what we have today is a way for attorneys and their teams to take depositions themselves using software.
Mm-hmm.
We help them through that process. We staff the event with a certified notary. That person swears in the witness. They provide light technical support. If anyone has any audio connection issues or there's too much overspeak, the person steps in and helps correct those so that they get a clean record.
Okay.
And then within 5 days so at the end of the deposition, everything gets processed within about 2 hours.
Wow.
The rough deposition transcript, the video, everything gets sent to the attorney. And then within 5 days, there's a professionally proofread and legally formatted transcript that gets delivered. So that was a big part of the first step, right, in setting up kind of the foundation for what it could look like in the future. The next piece of that we just launched about 2 months ago is the ability to quickly analyze and summarize and create video clips from depositions using software. And so that's where the generative AI piece comes in. There is an element of large language models involved in the ASR, automated speech recognition. But the thing that people mainly think about chat when they think about generative AI. So we have implemented a chat-like experience into the web application where you can go in after the deposition and you can chat with, prompt, for an answer with your deposition.
And curious, what's been the feedback from litigators using the service?
Yeah, it's been awesome. I mean, it's been exactly what I had hoped. Yeah. When you develop anything or start any company, a lot of people, I think you worry, or you're just drinking your own Kool-Aid, are other people actually going to like this and want to use it? And so we've had, at this point, we've done about 1,000 depositions across 15 states, and we've got over 400 attorneys that have used Skribe. And so I can think of one example just that really resonates with the part of the vision that I had, which is it should be really simple to take a deposition, and you should be able to almost instantly access that video record and use it in a meaningful way.
Right.
And I have a friend, I have a actually former opponent down in San Antonio, Texas, who came back to me raving about the product because he took a deposition with Skribe in the morning of witness one. And then over the lunch break, he got into the Skribe web application and created video clips of some of the key moments from that deposition. And then in the next deposition in the afternoon, he used those video clips as exhibits. And he said the defense attorneys in that deposition, their minds were blown. They were like, what kind of wizardry did you just pull off to not only get the deposition that fast, but to actually go in and create video clips and then be able to use them in the afternoon deposition. So I think that's just kind of one example that illustrates what we were trying to accomplish.
Yeah. And I love it. On the website, you describe it as bringing testimony to life. Literally.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think there's a few things that we kind of stand for as a company. And one is that video is the most powerful form of evidence in a case. And so the experience I just described with depositions, we also have an offering we call Skribe Library, where you can upload any audio or video file. It could even be a video deposition you took a year ago with a different company altogether. You can upload any piece of audio or video evidence, and you can create clips, share those clips. You can actually take a clip from a video deposition or surveillance video, and you can embed it in your brief using the Skribe tool. So it's really it's trying to develop the type of tools that I want to use in my own law firm and that we do use in my firm. And so I've filed motions for summary judgment now where when the judge gets to the fact background section of the motion, they're actually getting thumbnails with, a headshot of the witness and clickable, where when they read the brief, they actually get to watch the testimony. So I
Incredible.
think that is really powerful and has the potential to influence, whoever it is, a judge, a jury, or an arbitrator.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, it brings testimony to life. It's all about efficiency, simplicity, and I like another tagline: increased access to justice. Again, literally.
Yeah, and the thing that maybe your listeners don't know, because a lot of litigators really don't know how much they spend on depositions,
Right.
especially attorneys on the defense side, or if they're on the plaintiff side and they're not the firm owner, they may not have quite as much of a finger on the pulse of the cost. But to get a deposition, a traditional deposition, transcript and the video and sync together,
Right.
the cost has crept all the way up to $1,000 per hour
Wow.
with a court reporting firm. And so our goal over time, as we continue to enhance the platform, continue to streamline things, is actually to bring our costs down, not up.
Right.
And so, we have some things that we're kind of working on now to hopefully bring that vision to reality. Because at the end of the day, we have talked to attorneys who literally could not take a deposition that would help their client because their client could not afford the deposition. And so I'll give one quick
Please, yeah.
example. Think about like a small car wreck case where the size of the policy is only $30,000, the insurance policy. Well, you can't go take 5 depositions in that case if every deposition is going to cost over $2,000 to take, because at that point you've already eaten up over $10,000 to $15,000 worth of the available policy. So, a lot of times people forget there's a large segment of litigation that, is just your day-to-day, your car wreck, your property damage, your family law disputes,
Yeah.
where parties just can't afford to spend some of the dollars that we see on the sticker prices for depositions nowadays.
Sure. And on that note, can you share, Carl? Like, is your fraction of the price? I guess can you tell us a little bit about the
Yeah.
pricing and the affordability of it?
Absolutely. So the way the Skribe is priced right now is by the hour of testimony. So no charge for off the record. It's $3.49 per hour. So it's about 60% less than a traditional court reporting solution. But a big part of that also is the speed. So while a lot of attorneys come to us and other legal professionals come to us for the cost savings initially, when we ask them for feedback, the number one piece of feedback we get is, oh yeah, the cost savings are great and all that, but we love how fast this
Yeah.
is. And we really believe that in today's, legal system, and really almost in any business, speed isn't just a necessity, it's a requirement. And I think that one of the things that we accomplish that no one else does in the market is that speed to the record. They say justice delayed is justice denied.
Right.
And I think that there's so many, it's almost like if you think about from a business owner's perspective, the turning inventory. So if you think about it from that perspective,
Yeah.
and you're a law firm owner, every delay adds up. And if you're waiting literally weeks or a month or more to get something back that you can't act on faster,
Right.
I think it has a really bad cumulative impact on your managing your case and your docket.
Sure. Yeah. It's just this cumulative effect of, the proverbial mountain just it's getting higher and higher. I'm just curious for anyone listening saying, wow, this sounds amazing. Do you have tutorials when you sign up? Is there a testing out period? Can you take it for a test drive, so to speak? Or how do you get trained in it? How does it work, Carl?
Yeah, absolutely. So anyone can email me, Karl with a K at Skribe with a K.ai, or just go to the website and contact support. There's a free trial for
Great.
uploading. If you had an audio or video file sitting in a hopefully digital file folder, but maybe not, maybe a still file cabinet. Believe it or not, I come across attorneys all the time that still store things in file cabinets. But you could take that audio or video file today, create a Skribe account for free. There's no monthly subscription. Upload that into your Skribe account and actually get that first file process for free for a certain duration. I believe it's up to 2 hours is the limit currently for the free trial. And then obviously, if they want to schedule a deposition, we have sample notices that can make sure that it's compliant with the rules in your jurisdiction. Just email me or support, and we can get you one of those samples. And as far as training, to answer the other part of your question, our support team is phenomenal. I mean, people kind of ask me, how do you do it?
Yeah.
Well, I don't do it. The team does it. And so, between Tom Irby, who's the CEO at Skribe, and Corey Bryan is head of product, and all the people that we have on the customer support team, I mean, they're just fantastic. And one of the other, in addition to speed, we get a lot of positive feedback on the customer service mindset that the team has.
Yeah. No, it just sounds like a major game changer. Just curious, have you had any competitors trying to kind of, to make a business off of your idea? Or is everything copyrighted? How does it work?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, it's a great question. So, I would say, of course, there is competition in almost every industry, unless you've just invented something that no one else has ever possibly seen or done before. Our biggest competition really is the status quo. And so, what I mean by that is there's so many very large, kind of think behemoth court reporting agencies that have been doing it the same way for 30 plus years, maybe 50 plus years, and they move slow. They're not really quick to adopt new technologies. And the idea of bringing something to market that would cut their margins by 60% or more is not really something that they're going to do overnight. So I think, there are a handful of companies that are doing similar things, but we seem to be the only one leading with a video and software is the future of how we capture testimony. One of the other companies, very large company, well, becoming large, bigger than us, based in California, they still use stenographers. So they still use that machine we talked about that was developed in 1877 or invented in 1877.
Wow.
We believe that video is the future of how testimony will be captured.
Yeah.
And that everyone from litigators to court administrators to judges will be able to, with a few keystrokes, quickly digest, summarize, watch the key testimony in any case, in any dispute. And I think we've, made a big step towards that just by launching Skribe over the last year and a half.
Yeah, absolutely. I always say to people, what's worth more, your time or your money, right? You come to that crossroads, right? Well, I don't mind paying more if it's going to be more efficient. But what I love about your product is you're saving the time, but it is also cheaper than the alternative, the 1877 archaic option that you have. So you got everything.
Yeah. And I think, a big part of that is like, we're looking at it. We're not looking at the current system and trying to make it a little bit better.
Yeah.
We're looking at it with a very fresh take and saying, look, this is an outdated way to capture the spoken word, and it's holding back the entire industry. And we think it's time for a change, and not just a small change, but a big change, a bold change.
Yeah.
And, to me, when video becomes the record, not only is it instantly accessible, you can analyze it with software, but I also think it's a better representation. There's no better representation of what the witness said than just playing them in their own words. And so I think there's something there, and I think that the customers that we see coming on board every day to Skribe are proving that out.
Yeah, because you capture the tone, right? You capture the tone, the real life IRL of the witness in the deposition, which to me is invaluable. I'm not a lawyer, but can't put a price on that. I think that's the amazing part. I'm just thinking, it's kind of like, I'm thinking of analogies here. Like, Zoom just really blew up with COVID, right? So I feel like you're kind of penning yourself as kind of the Zoom for law depositions.
I think you hit the nail on the head, and we actually are an official partner with Zoom.
Yeah.
We're one of their ISV partners, as they call it. We want to make it very simple for any legal professional to capture the spoken word. It should be as easy as putting a calendar appointment in Outlook or Google Calendar.
Yeah.
It should be as simple as that. And so that's the approach that we take when we develop our software. Is you should be able in a few keystrokes schedule the deposition, and by the click of a link or calling in, if you have someone that needs to call in by the phone, we do accommodate that. But the vast majority of people click a link and Zoom opens up, and they're able to testify or capture the testimony very, very easily.
Yeah, amazing. Because again, the focus should be the testimony, right? Not all the other paperwork, so to speak, that goes with it. It kind of reminds me when EasyPass came out, right? Like it kind of automated the toll taking process. So it's automating your process. Really incredible. On that note, we talked about Skribe. I'm curious from your perspective, Karl, because you're really keyed into AI in terms of the legal tools. What are some of the other tech tools you think growing law practices should be exploring outside of your invention?
Yeah, so no, for sure, and I do have other thoughts about kind of what direction this could go. I am not one of the people that will get on and say, you should all look for another career because AI is going to replace attorneys or paralegals. I think AI could impact perhaps the job market in the future as far as the demand, like as far as supply and demand. It could certainly impact supply and demand because I think that the attorneys and the legal professionals who leverage AI in their practice will be able to do more with less.
Mm,
So I think that's more likely what we're going to see, and I think we're starting to see a little bit of that now. I have heard reports of in-house counsel, for example, and their teams being able to do a little bit more internally instead of outsourcing everything to outside counsel because some of them are beginning to leverage software. I think in the world that I live, which is personal injury defense. That's what I do most of the time when I'm not working with the Scribe team, of
yeah.
course. And so, I think about, are there going to be tools that can, in a very accurate way, take a large data set of medical records and create a reliable chronology? I think we're beginning to see that.
Yeah.
I've tested a couple of products that have done a decent job at that. So I think that's taking a large amount of data and condensing it down or making it chattable, for lack of better words, where you could query the data set and get a really quick response that with a link to the source record that it relied on to give you the answer, I think is going to be important. I think it's going to be something, at least for litigators, it's going to speed up our practice. So it's going to make things things that, if you have, for example, a brief you need to write or a discovery response you need to hammer out, and what otherwise would have taken, hours and hours and hours, I think you'll be able to do it in a fraction of the time with the power of software. And so those are the types of tools that I'm looking at right now and considering deploying in my firm. I want to make sure that I don't overcorrect. Like I don't want to put something out there that says, okay, a paralegal or associate, you don't even need to draft the discovery anymore because we've got software that can do
Yeah.
that. I think that could result in some of these headlines that we've seen in the newspapers where attorneys are getting sanctioned for doing things, citing case law that's made up. You may not get sanctioned for sending discovery that is, not necessarily factually on point, but I do think you still need to have a set of eyes review it top to bottom and make sure that they're familiar enough with the file that they have confidence in what they're sending.
Any specific software, Karl, that you'd recommend by name that you employ that you find really helpful, like couldn't live without? Or is it still kind of a work in progress?
For me, I know this, some of your listeners who are in legal tech AI may cringe at this. I am using ChatGPT Enterprise quite a bit. I'm using it for what I would call not heavy lifts, like just taking note. I'll give you an example from today.
Yeah.
So I was taking notes during a mediation this morning. And my notes are decent, but they're not something I would just copy and paste into an email to the client. So after we get done talking, I'm planning to take my notes and drop them into my ChatGPT Enterprise license and ask it basically to craft a client email based on my notes and the following points and take that as my first draft, then tailor it and send it to the client. So, it's going to take what could maybe have taken me 20 to 30 minutes to draft a good quality mediation recap, probably down to, 10 minutes or less. And so that's just one small example.
Yeah. But how do you, just for anyone who's not using Chat GPT or Chat GPT Enterprise, more importantly, you actually have to type those notes though into Chat GPT before it can generate the email?
Yeah, you would. You could have. So that was a call that I didn't record because it was a confidential, mediation. I don't know if this is what you're alluding to, but you could absolutely have used, whether it's Scribe or something else. There are note taker applications that you could take into a online meeting
Yeah.
that could really help you generate not only a transcript but notes from the call, action items from the call. That's something we've looked at a little bit. For a litigator, the concern is you don't want to create evidence and you also don't want to potentially jeopardize your attorney-client privilege. So the recording of calls and then taking transcriptions and
Yeah.
AI, action items, takeaways from those. It depends on the use case. Actually, it's super important to bring up though, because one thing I'm starting to notice for some meetings that I attend is you start to get these bots interjecting into the meeting. So you need, like, everyone that's on listening to this podcast, especially if you're an attorney, be aware of that
Hmm.
and be sure to call out and make sure you're comfortable with being recorded, because if you see a note taker, the odds are you are being recorded.
Right. No, it is a very fair point. Obviously, and depending on the kind of law you practice, note taking may or may not apply to you. But yeah, I'm happy you gave some of those examples because I was curious kind of, what were some of the problems that you feel AI could solve? So it's pretty much it's efficiency, maybe it's aggregation of information. Is there anything else that you feel is kind of like a big headline of ways it's helping you, or did that pretty much cover it?
I mean, I think it helps with some of the really mundane and frustrating tasks,
Yeah.
and which is nice. Like, for example, I use it when I'm drafting discovery now or drafting responses and objections, because, I kind of know the gist of what I want to say, but instead of me taking the time to type it up, I can just drop a few mental notes or even dictate them into something like a Chat GPT Enterprise, and I'll get a decent first draft, which I then copy and paste into Microsoft Word
Yeah.
and wordsmith it how I like it. I am taking a fairly cautious approach, and I haven't deployed all of these solutions yet internally into my firm. The one on legal research that I like the best is actually Lexis AI. That one's been pretty impressive, and the ability to prompt the bot, so to speak, on legal topics and get not only easy to digest written responses, but also case sites that you can quickly get real cases that have the shepherd's treatment. In other words, the subsequent, citation treatment of the case. So I think those are some of the ways. I mean, we're beginning to see. Most of the legal tech tools that I see are actually on the transactional side of the practice, contract drafting,
Mm.
real estate deals. All the types of things where attorneys typically use a form bank and go in and revise a prior form. You're seeing a lot of movement on that side with companies releasing AI. They're even calling them agents. I think one of them has even released one they call an associate, AI agent associate,
Yeah.
or something like that, that can be prompted and actually go draft, a set of contracts or an employment agreement or an NDA or whatever it may be. I do think that could very well, if not replace, certainly augment an attorney or a paralegal. In the litigation side, it's not to say there aren't innovations happening. There are definitely innovations, but it's still, I don't have anything yet that I've found where I can just put in my case documents and out pops, an extremely high quality case evaluation that takes into consideration
Mm.
all the nuances of the venue you're in or the judge that you're in front of or the opposing counsel that you're facing. So, I think I won't say litigators are insulated against being replaced by AI. I mean, I think it is possible, but I think what's more likely is law firm owners or their clients are going to start using these tools to produce higher quality work faster.
Yeah. It's all about the speed being a requirement, as you say. A lot of good catchphrases you've said, and also that I saw on the website, Carl, that I really appreciated. Um, you talked a little bit about the future of AI and kind of how it's transforming the legal community, but any other predictions you may have in terms of the
Yeah.
future of law, AI or non-AI related? Curious your
Yeah.
thoughts.
Yeah. I'll give you one, and I'm sure some of your listeners will say, "No way, I'll never do that." I think we are going to get to a point in the future where we're going to attend court hearings and depositions and other client meetings and things like that using some form of virtual reality or augmented reality. I think that sounds far fetched today, but if I had told you in 2018 or 2019 that you would take a deposition by Skype, you probably would have told me I was crazy,
Yeah.
right? That there's no way you were going to use something like Skype to take a deposition or
Right.
attend a court hearing. So I think as the price of things like Apple Vision Pro come down, as Meta refines their offering, as Google begins to roll out their offerings, and they become more entrenched in the consumer world, we are going to have a future where you can maybe not beam in like hologram style, but it will feel very like you're there in person, sitting across the table from the people that you're speaking to, in a way that even this podcast where you and I are seeing each other now and a video conference maybe still feels a little detached.
Okay.
I think that barrier will be broken down, and the ability to just throw on a pair of, whether they're goggles or maybe a slightly hefty style of glasses,
Huh.
to feel like you're actually sitting across the table from the person you're talking to. I think that has the potential impact to be a major game changer in the legal field.
Interesting. Yeah, I was going to say, can you break that down? What does that look like? VR, augmented reality, but you just did. But is your hypothesis that that will ultimately replace complete in-person interaction?
I wouldn't go I wouldn't go that far.
Okay.
I think it will. I think we've already seen the first version of this through Zoom and through what you and I are using right now,
Yeah.
right? To be able to what would otherwise pre-COVID probably have required an in-person studio where we would sit down and talk,
Welcome to
is
my
now
world.
being done. Yeah. So I think that we've already seen the first iteration. So I think people are already willing to meet virtually. Okay. So is far-fetched as it may sound to put on a pair of goggles or glasses, you're already doing FaceTime. You're already doing Zoom with your family, your friends, your colleagues. And so it's just a little socially awkward today to put the goggles on because it looks different. It reminds me a little bit of when Apple first came out with the AirPods.
Yeah.
People really made fun of that first version, and they were like, there's no way I'm putting that in my ear. It looks like a Q-tip. Or when Apple first came out with the iPad, they were like, that's a horrible name. That makes me think of feminine hygiene products.
Right.
Why would anybody name their product an iPad?
Yeah.
Why didn't they call it the iTablet or something, like that? And so I think people often have a gut reaction based off what they know and what they're used to, and then maybe even ridicule something that's different at first. So I think the reason I think that client meetings and court hearings and depositions will eventually trend towards VR and AR is I think that social barrier will be broken down and people will become very comfortable putting on some form of VR or AR. I think most of us hope it's more like glasses than goggles.
Right.
But I have a pair of the Meta, blanking on what they call their product now, but I have a pair of the Meta goggles and I use them a little bit with my kids for games, but I also use one of them for actual virtual reality workouts, which sounds dorky, and maybe it is a little bit dorky,
Yeah.
but I can tell you, until you've tried it and put it on, I mean, it's pretty awesome.
What just
It's pretty.
Yeah, tell us a little bit more. What is it? What does it feel like? How is it different than watching something
So,
on TV?
yeah. So I use, the Meta Quest is the name of it, and it feels like you're like the one that I use is supernatural. So it feels like you're standing on the top of a mountain or on a beach or whatever, and you have these virtual objects coming towards you. There's a couple of different classes you can do. I do the boxing classes. So when I hold my hands up in front of my face, it looks like I'm wearing boxing gloves, and the controllers have some haptic feedback. So the objects are coming at you from all different angles, and you're punching right, left, you're ducking under lasers, and you can get a really impressive workout in a 30-minute, VR game basically. And you finish and you're like, not only was that really fun, but I look down on the floor. I'm like, wow, I worked up a really good sweat playing this game.
Right, but just on the other side of that, though, but there's no impact. You're not hitting anything as if you were hitting a bag in a real class, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's more, no, that's right. There's no impact. You do feel a little bit of haptic feedback. So you're getting a little bit of a sensation that you've made contact with something, but it's really those type of classes are really just cardio. It's quick movement.
Okay.
Think about like, if you went to a fitness class at your local gym and you were doing a Zumba or doing some type of class where, you're constantly doing motions up, down, left, right, twist, turn. That's really ultimately what's helping you get the workout. So
Totally.
I only use it for that in games. I don't currently use it to interact with anyone, although they do offer that option.
Right.
I don't personally think it's there yet, but I could definitely see how it could be someday.
Yeah. No, we digress a little bit, but I was just curious. I had to follow up. I was curious about how that works.
It's super fun. I think honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if one of the future Apple Vision products focuses on fitness, because again, as someone who was skeptical of VR myself, I actually found that to be the most natural use case
Yeah.
because it's something that you typically, a lot of people do alone, not everyone, but working out, and being able to get put into kind of a virtual environment and then gamify a workout
Hmm.
to where you feel like you're playing a game, but you're actually doing something that's healthy for your body,
Yeah.
is really interesting. And Apple hasn't done that yet, but I bet in the next version they do.
Yeah, yeah. Well, just to kind of bring it back to this whole idea of like what we're doing now, and as you mentioned prior, pre-COVID, everything was in a studio, right? There was such a huge cost involved getting a studio and the whole crew to shoot something like we're doing right now. That was my old life doing all that, but now everything pretty much is on Zoom. So you think about just the efficiency, the cost savings, but also just the sheer volume now of all the content that's being created because of this platform, right? And how it's really just everyone has a voice now, not just people who can afford studios and everything that comes along with it. So it's truly life changing in so many capacities. Also, like the real estate industry, right? Closings don't take place in person anymore. It's all you're not even involved. Your attorney, they just meet on
And, and it,
Zoom.
And if they do, you're kind of irritated, right? Like I find myself somewhat annoyed if I have to go in person for something that I feel like could have been done
Right.
in an email or over a Zoom.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think, the other thing you asked about whether the future could be virtual. I've also noticed that for a lot of my clients, they're having more trouble getting attendance at in-person conferences approved.
Mm,
Like a lot of these companies that scaled back some of their budget for travel never scaled them back up. So I think that that's also, the industry has changed in how willing companies and I think people are to take time away from their family and their friends and spend the company's money on going to a meeting. Is this really necessary? Do I really need to fly across the country? Am I going to get value
yeah.
out of this that exceeds the cost?
Right. Well, yeah, there's just that everything has controversy, that person to person. I have friends who are in sales who go to these big conferences, and it's these companies are spending millions of dollars, right? And at the end of the day, it all could have been done virtually the way it was during the heart of COVID. But then there was this other side was like, let's get back to that in-person connection because the ends are greater, I guess, than the means. But I think that's depends on the
I,
industry.
I think I think both are
Yeah.
important. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I still go to in-person
Yeah.
conferences, and I was just meeting with two clients in Atlanta last week, where I flew to Atlanta to meet with them, and we met at their offices and went to dinner,
Yeah.
and that type of stuff is still extremely important. And I'm not
Totally.
here to say that all
Yeah.
depositions should be taken by Zoom, but I think a vast majority can.
Yeah.
And that it kind of becomes what's the norm versus the exception.
Mhm.
And for me, for cost, not only for cost reasons. Let me give you another
Sure.
example. You asked why I started Skribe. When I was younger, I spent a lot of time on the road, staying in shitty hotels and driving when I could have been at home with my
Mhm.
kids, And so I think there's a work-life balance component to this where you can work really hard, but then when your mediation is done or your podcast interview is over, you can literally close your laptop and walk down the hall and see your spouse or see your kids and
Yeah.
have dinner. And, I like today, for example, I had a mediation that pre-COVID would have needed to be in person. It probably would have been in Houston. And this podcast, as you said, probably would have been in a studio somewhere. But at the end of this workday, I'm going to pick up my daughters and take them to basketball practice.
Yeah.
And I would not have been able to do that pre-COVID because those events probably would have been in person. And so to me, I have to think about what's essential, like what's essential in my life
Yeah.
and what really matters. And I think software has the power to kind of give us back time, and time really is our most valuable resource.
Yeah, and obviously, when you're trying to grow a business, right? If you could do more depositions because there's no travel time, right? I mean, it's a no brainer. Just curious, final thought, Karl. Any negatives? I mean, you talked a little bit about being recorded, attorney-client privilege, rather. A lot of positives for AI in the legal community, but the other side of the coin, things that headlines, red flag, things people should be aware of because a lot of people are novices in the space and
Yeah.
you don't want to get suckered, so to speak.
Yeah. I'm going to spot two problems, but I don't have solutions. Sorry.
Okay.
So problems is one, if I was a young lawyer, growing up right now and trying to learn how to practice law, I think not only the rise of virtual or remote or hybrid workspaces, but also the rise of technology is makes it more difficult for them to learn how to become a lawyer and really become a craftsman or craftswoman at their trade. There is no substitute for doing the work. And what I mean by that is drafting the discovery from scratch, reviewing every document in the case to prepare your report, going through all the medical records and the chronologies to get ready to take a deposition, learning how to do that and what to look for, and being able to walk down the hall and ask the partner or the senior associate or the senior paralegal for advice, I think is at risk, because I think that these software tools and the rise of remote and hybrid workspaces make it much more difficult for a younger or more junior, not necessarily younger. We have some great second career attorneys as well that maybe aren't young in age, but are in experience. It makes it more difficult for them to get really good at what they do. I'm not sure what the solution is. I think it's just an issue that law firms should be aware of and think about as you train your team, is to make sure that, a software that can maybe speed things up doesn't necessarily eliminate some of the skill building and the coaching and the mentoring that needs to take place to make sure you have a really solid foundation. So that's one of them. The other one, I kind of touched on both ideas. One was not being able to walk down the hall and meet in person as much. So my law firm is hybrid. We have a 50% policy. I feel like we kind of get the best of both, but there are days when I'm in the office because it's one of my office days and the person I need to talk to is working from home because it's their work from home day. And there is a little bit that's lost there that would be nice just to be able to walk down the hall.
Sure.
That's part of the challenge. So those are the two that I see, that losing that in-person connection. It's not insurmountable, but you have to be disciplined and you have to make the time to put away distractions and set up a Zoom where you actually focus, and talk to the person, if they're not available to meet in person. And then on the software side, I could see if I was a younger lawyer than I am now, it could be very tempting just to drop things into an AI and out pops something that sounds really good. But just because it sounds really good doesn't mean it's right. And the only way to know if it's right is actually do the work and roll up your sleeves and study it and make sure that you're comfortable with the output. And so I think those are both challenges that we're facing with the rise of AI.
Yeah, and I think we're experiencing it in real time, how to how to navigate it. But what you said is so important. You don't want to cut the wrong corners. It's streamlining some things, but there's tradition and the basics that, as you said, are so important. So today's chat has been incredible. Thank you for your insight, Karl. You're so knowledgeable in this space, and Skribe is just amazing. It can't. I looked at your website. It's exciting, and I'm not even in the legal community, so to speak, as a lawyer or a litigator. So for someone outside the community, for me to be saying that, I think it says a lot. So congratulations on that. Finally, just again, tell everybody how to get in touch with you. I know you mentioned it earlier, but once again, if anyone wants to connect with you further regarding your firm, what you do, or explore Skribe, what's the best way?
Yeah, so you can reach out to me either place, law firm or Skribe. I give the Skribe email because it's the shortest. So my email at Skribe is Karl with a K, Karl at Skribe with a K .ai. So that's SKRIBE.ai. Feel free to drop me an email. I usually respond within 24 hours, kind of my policy that I've followed for many years until it gets overwhelming. Happy to get feedback, happy to share ideas as well. I mean, I've got everything from sample presentations to, I'm working on a sample policy for rolling out AI at a small to medium sized law firm as I begin to get more, more SOP'd, so to speak, standard operating procedures, guidelines, training tutorials on rolling this out, because I think a lot of us are still figuring out how to do it. And I do think the other thing I'll leave your listeners with is doing nothing is a bad option, because here's what's going to happen. And I hear about it from time to time. If you don't train your team on how to use AI and implement tools, they will just go use it without telling you. And the last thing you want is for one of your associates or secretaries or paralegals or whoever it is on your team to go drop something into Google Gemini or, X, they have AI as well, whatever, pick a consumer AI just to speed up their work and help them catch up on tasks. You really need to be thinking about an AI use policy, even if it is don't use AI at all. That is a policy. I don't think it's the right one, But training, I think training is going to be such a big component of this as we move forward.
Yeah, no, you said it. Hit the nail on the head. It's so important just to be comprehensive. Doing nothing is not the answer. Ignoring it and saying, no, we're not a firm that uses AI. AI is everywhere, right? You don't want to be left in the dust. So thank you, Karl, for your insight and your generosity and letting our viewers connect with you to hear more. Side note, I think it's also really cool that your story about how you left a really big firm to start your own. A huge risk, right? Everything you went through.
Yeah.
We didn't even get into that, but I encourage people to read your story and kind of your experience and kind of what you learned
Yeah,
in that process.
learn through my mistakes.
Yeah,
Maybe we'll have to do another episode just on
I
that.
was going to tell our
Yeah, it was-
producer that. Yep.
well, I'll leave your readers with this if this intrigues them to a possible future episode. Last week we met with the client that we lost when I started my own firm in 2015.
No way.
And so I won't name who that is. We'll save that for a future possible episode. But
Good cheese.
when I left the big firm, it went exactly as you hope it would never go. It did not go well. I lost a lot of sleepless nights. But ultimately, for whatever reason, it put me on a path to success. And now, about 9 years later, we actually have the client back that we lost, and we also have 30 plus additional clients that we maybe never would have gotten if we hadn't lived through that hardship. So appreciate you bringing that up. That's a separate story for sure.
Yeah, that's a great story, and Skribe is a great story. So congrats on all of the above, and to be continued, we hope.
Maybe so.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Thanks again. We really appreciate it. Our thanks once again to Karl Seelbach. And thank you to all of our listeners out there. We hope you enjoyed this conversation. It's been a good one. We'll be back soon with another episode of Everything Except the Law. Be sure to check out previous episodes of our show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and of course, the Answering Legal YouTube channel. Links to everything covered in today's conversation can be found in the description of this episode. I'm TWB. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.